What is going on, YouTube? What is going on, Kansas City? And what is going on, everybody? Hopefully everybody in the back over here can hear me. This is the Beat of KC, and I want to welcome everybody to the show today. This is the Kingdom Crew podcast. I have Michael Darcy on with me. Go check out the YouTube channel, the KC Sports Report. And I have Josh Fan on, who literally does everything imaginable. What is going on, guys?
Doing well.
Not much. I'm super excited to talk about the final roster cuts and the new Kansas City Chiefs of 2021.
You don't sound very excited. Let's try that again, Josh, who also has a YouTube channel. Let's try that again for your excitement for the 53.
Well, I don't want to be too loud because there's people sleeping around here, but I am excited to talk about the new look Kansas City Chiefs of 2021.
I was going to say, Lucas probably woke up his son and everything.
Yeah, I'm going to have to tone it down a little bit too. My bad. My bad. All right, guys, I'm ready to get into this. I really am.
Whiskey talks. All right, continue.
It does. Cheers, everybody. But you guys, how many podcasts did we do? Probably at least 3, I would say, where we really dove in and talked roster. And now it's come to realization where we are seeing who actually made this team. We're seeing the 53.
It's funny. It's funny, Lucas, because I was kind of thinking about it earlier today just on my own. It's funny because I was wondering how many more times I could talk about Michael's boy, Cornell Powell, not making the roster every podcast episode.
Put that guy in a body cast. He gone. Yeah. I'm telling you.
Well, he did latch back on the practice squad, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later and give our thoughts. But I was glad to see him stay with the team because I was worried there for a second maybe someone else likes the upside and picks him up. But
since you brought it up, I'm not necessarily going to dive right into the practice squad yet, but I brought this up. I can't remember who it was with the Arrowhead Live guys. I jumped in after the preseason game.
Hold on, by the way. Arrowhead Live, let's give props to them for being early on that Willie Gay thing. I know a lot of people were
destroying him.
Yeah, they were destroying him, but he ended up being right. And I said, and I never criticized him, but I did say when you say something like that, you got to be 100% sure. And it looks like they were because that's what ended up going on. But
they must have a pretty good source, is my guess, because I mean, like you said, they nailed it. So
they got the cuts right too.
Yeah. So I've been I was talking to I would say a group of the individuals in the post game. They hosted a Twitter. I don't know what the Twitter thing's called, but it was live. And basically I was talking to them about, do you guys feel that they tried to hide? Because I think you can, as coaches who've been in the NFL, especially in Andy Reid's shoes, who's been doing this for so many freaking years, you could probably see, after the first, however many practices, that Cornell Powell may have some. He had something for them to draft him, but I think he saw something that he's just like, I don't know if he's going to be able to make this team. Do you think at that point they came together and decided like we're not going to put enough film on tape to keep him on the practice squad? Because someone brought this up and I thought this was perfect. He did play with obviously Trevor Lawrence, who is down in Jacksonville. Urban Meyer is looking to pair. I mean, they did draft Travis Etienne with them as well. Unfortunately, he's hurt, but that would have been a place I thought there was a chance he could have latched on if he would have got claimed. Do you think that they just did not put enough film out because they were like, hey, we want to keep him low to the radar and we want to be able to put him back on the practice squad? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
That's actually really interesting. But Josh,
because I read into that a little bit, and while I understand like the premise of them maybe wanting to do that at a certain point, I kind of struggle to buy that, because if you thought that he was good enough if you thought he was good, if you thought he was good, then you would want him to go out and show why he deserves a spot on the roster. Why hide him?
Here's my counter argument to that, because I was waiting to see how you answered. Because the Kansas City Chiefs have gone to back-to-back Super Bowls and really have created depth for the first time. I think at almost every position we have depth. And I think at receiver, they knew that they at least had 4 guys that there was no question they were going to make this roster. Then after that, it was, okay, now we can start to consider it. But when you have guys like Fountain step up and some of these other guys, it's like, okay, he's not quite there yet. So let's go ahead and prevent. We see what he's doing in practice. That's not necessarily getting out there, but we don't want to put him in preseason games because that is something that can be out there. So I kind of just wondered. I still wonder if that's an approach to have when they do that, because it's just very interesting. There's been some guys even on the defense that you could say the same thing for that, or we will talk about on the practice squad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I could totally see them saying, we got other guys we want to keep, so maybe we just keep Cornell Powell on the low so we can just keep him around. But at the same time, it's like, well, if you thought he was good enough to show something, then why not let him show that? So you just give him a roster spot. To me, it's a little confusing, but I understand. And you mentioned like the rise of other guys like Daurice Fountain. I don't know if they quite expected Daurice Fountain to do as good as he did in the preseason. And because of that, you just see other guys go. And Lucas, it's interesting because you mentioned in our last podcast, and I don't want to get too deep into it since we want to start kind of from the top, going down the roster and the positions. But Marcus Kemp was another dude who everyone's like, oh, shoot, he got released. He got waived or whatever it was. I forget if it was released or waived, but he got let go, didn't make the team. And then I was thinking what you said. Marcus Kemp is one of those guys. He's either a chief or he's not. So they knew they could get rid of him and bring him back in some capacity because no one else was going to get him, and they can use the roster spot for somewhere else.
For sure. And, I definitely think that that's something that we're going to talk about because, yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example.
Let me give my 2 cents on the Cornell Powell conspiracy theory. I think, honestly, I can't even say that's a reason, because if he was that good, or he would have made the team. Like, even if he had showed that upside is more than a reason to put Daurice Fountain on the team over him. And I also think that, he didn't look good in training camp. From what I saw, I remember distinctly hearing the coaches, I think it was Bieniemy, just screaming at him. Maybe it was Tobe. I think it was Tobe. Dave Tobe was just screaming at him and from playing sports, what's a good scream and a bad scream necessarily? That was a bad scream. That wasn't a encouraging scream. That was a you're in the doghouse kind of scream. So, I think that they must have saw enough from him in that aspect, and I guess that he wasn't good enough on special teams for him to get a roster spot that way, because we've seen it before. If a receiver that gets drafted is exceptional on special teams, he's probably going to make the team, but I don't think that he was. So, when you add it all together, it kind of leads to why he's a member of the practice squad now.
Well, and the final thing I'll say on this, too, I think that going into it, they drafted Cornell Powell not knowing that Fountain was going to explode on the scene like he did. And then the same goes with Marcus Kemp. They knew that there was a possibility he would be a special teamer, but Marcus Kemp really has stepped up, at least from a receiving standpoint, too. And so when you draft a guy, you have every intention, but then you have these other guys who have at least been in the league and understand what it's like to play in the NFL, and they showed out more than Cornell Powell has. And so I get it. That's why I think I'm not necessarily disappointed or really kind of was in shock, but I definitely think that, this could happen more in the future too, just because people want to play for the Kansas City Chiefs because they're successful now. So, but yeah, we'll continue on. Let's go ahead and dive into the 53. So I'll let you kind of take over, Josh, since you got the roster pulled up. We'll start wherever you start.
Yeah, well, of course, the first one is Patrick Mahomes, Chad Henne make the roster. No shock there, right? Next one, though, running back. They keep Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams, Jerick McKinnon. Derek Gore and Darwin Thompson end up getting cut. I think there's really no surprises there. However, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So I think from what it sounds like is the team wanted to bring Darwin back on the practice squad. Darwin said, I'm out of here. Signs with the Buccaneers on their practice squad, and the Chiefs turned to Derek Gore, which actually I'm a fan of that over Darwin. I think Derek Gore has more upside than Darwin at this point, but Darwin Thompson ends up going to the Buccaneers practice squad over the Chiefs, and I hear a lot of people kind of on Twitter like upset about that, like, oh, screw you, Darwin, you know, what a dumb move. And it's like, I love Darwin, and I feel like you guys will probably agree with me here. I love Darwin, but how can you blame him at all? Because every time there was an opening on this team for someone to step up at running back, they always signed someone over Darwin. They always played someone over Darwin. So why would Darwin be inclined to stay at all? He wants to go somewhere where maybe a team values his play style more, and maybe he gets a shot there. Like, I wish Darwin all the luck in the world, and I do not blame him at all.
I agree with you, but the problem is it's not like he went to Indianapolis or a place that needed a running back. Tampa Bay's got like, what, 3 on the roster, maybe 4? Leonard Fournette, LaShawn McCoy, I believe, is still a member there. Rojo, Ronald Jones. Like, they don't need a running back. So if you're
and Gio Bernard, who signed there too.
Yeah. So you think that he's just going to magically get playing time in one of the deepest backfields in the NFL? No, he's not. And I almost feel bad for him because I just feel like with the Chiefs, there was a chance that he'd make it back up. I think this is kind of.
But the thing is, I don't think there was. Because they never showed any interest in giving Darwin the ball in a real game. So I think what his thinking is you look at Tampa Bay, and yeah, they're still loaded at running back. Most teams have a handful of guys at running back, but let's say attrition is to hit the Bucs running back room, then Darwin probably has a better chance to get playing time there in Tampa than the Chiefs when attrition hits the Chiefs and they need a running back. Because I think we all agree that, let's say Clyde and Darryl both get hurt. The Chiefs are going out and they're signing somebody. They wouldn't be bringing Darwin up.
Probably, yeah.
I think in this case, though, because it's Gore, they will. I think it was the playing style of Darwin Thompson. I think he had to prove, not necessarily to Andy, but I think he had to solidify a good working relationship with Bieniemy, who obviously was a running back, came up as a running backs coach. Now, I think Darwin, as funny as this sounds, I think he picked a practice squad where he's going to be in warm weather, and he's not just going to be going out and practicing in freezing cold weather. And so he's like, I'll go to Tampa. But all jokes aside, I think he knew the end was there. My biggest thing for Darwin is I think when the time comes, I think he's going to be an incredible football coach. I think he's endured enough to understand what it takes to work hard. I think he understands what at least it takes to work to get onto an NFL team. I think he would be an incredible football coach. But
he is. And I do want to say one more thing because I've listened to a lot of Darwin Thompson interviews. He's someone that is a really underrated listen in interviews. But I remember Brandon Kiley, who used to be with 610 in KC and now he's with 101 in St. Louis. He interviewed Darwin Thompson at training camp, and Darwin said, because he was a guy who went JUCO and then transferred after JUCO, and he said that was because he took the long road, not the wrong road, because a lot of people who go to JUCO, it's because the grades aren't there and they don't have good study habits. And Darwin said that he finally realized that he needs those study habits because it translates to the football field and having to get the playbook down, and that's how he got to where he was because he kept that work ethic. He picked up that work ethic and he kept it with him throughout JUCO and college. Finally made it to the NFL as a undersized running back, and I respect him.
Won a Super Bowl.
I agree with you. Yeah, won a Super Bowl too.
And you know, you made a really good point. Derek Gore is another one of those guys you really can't hold down. I remember Blake Schneiders. Shout out to Blake Schneiders if you're watching this. He played with him in Coffeyville, I believe. But, I mean, he was always working. And I think that is something that, I mean, if you work really, really hard the way that these dudes do, they're going to succeed in some aspect. And, I mean, heck, Derek Gore's on the practice squad with a chance to get called up at some point. So that's something. Go ahead. I
know when you and I went, those two were still out there after practice with the jugs machine. I mean, both of them were. And like you said, you quoted multiple times that Darwin would stick after and just stay on the jugs machine. So the work ethic wasn't the question mark. I think it was the fact that it came down to capability. Like, this is the NFL. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like, they're looking to get the best. And it's not that he wasn't the best. He just, he couldn't perform to his size and things like that. I mean,
I'll tell you what. If Darwin could learn how to block, that is what will get him to the next level. Because he can't, he tries that shot block, that's not going to work. You got to firmly, because, I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he doesn't have the height advantage, which he doesn't. But at the same point,
Neither did Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yeah, and this is going to sound a little bit sus. I'm not trying to make it like that, but he's kind of a thicker dude. He's got some mass to him. So it's not like he can't pick it up. It's just that he didn't. So I think that if he wants to be a more all-around running back, you got to learn how to block. I mean,
yeah.
All right, let's go to the next one, Josh.
All right, so we got wide receiver Tyreek Hill, McCole Hardman, Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson, Darius Fountain. Now that we're actually talking about the receivers now, I got to say that it would be so much easier, these scenarios that we talk about, if the Chiefs would just cut ties with Demarcus Robinson. But we've beaten that horse to death. But Marcus Kemp ended up not making it. But now Tyron today went on the COVID reserve list, which opened up a roster spot for Marcus Kemp to come back. When Tyron is eventually let off that, I'm not sure what the corresponding move is going to be. But it looks like, well, I hope that's not the case. But Marcus Kemp is basically a part of that group now. But I'm super happy Darius Fountain made it, man, because he was my guy throughout preseason and training camp. We talked about him on here a lot. But Darius Fountain showed a lot. He earned a spot, and I'm glad that the Chiefs saw that and they let him on the team. And I think Darius Fountain is one of those guys they had to make a decision somewhere else, like with Marcus Kemp. And like we said, Lucas, he's either a Chief or he's not. So I think they found that an easy decision over Fountain, because I think the Chiefs probably knew that if they cut Fountain, that Fountain was not going to be available. I think someone else probably would have picked up Darius Fountain. But I just got to say, it's a great story because he turned a summer tryout into a roster spot on the Chiefs. Mm-hmm. Super happy for him. But I got to say, and I'm sure you guys will give your thoughts and then respond to this, but I am still concerned about this Chiefs receiver group just a tad bit, because you got Tyreek Hill, but when Tyreek Hill is not in the game, I question who's going to step up, who is going to be that guy, who's going to separate themselves from the pack of the Byron Pringles and the McCole Hardmans and the Darius Fountains and stuff. And people should be excited about their upside. I'm not saying they're a bad group of receivers, but there's Tyreek Hill, and then there's a huge gap, and then there's all those guys. And they need someone that goes in between, somewhere in that gap. And someone that got cut from another team that I'm really interested in, and I'm probably going to record a video on this after we're done, but I would love for the Chiefs to bring in a guy like John Brown, who just got released from the Raiders. He is someone that, and I looked into it, he is only 2 seasons removed from being a 1,000-yard receiver. And at this point, I know the Chiefs would be looking for a traditional X receiver or someone like that, and that's not really John Brown. But at this point, you just need someone with proven production, because that's what this group lacks. It's proven production. And John Brown can give you about 500 yards and a few touchdowns, and I think that would be perfect for this group. Again, just 2 seasons removed from being a 1,000-yard receiver, and then his production went down in Buffalo, mostly because they brought in Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, so there's only so many yards to go around. And from what I understand, the Raiders didn't cut him necessarily because he was bad or anything like that.
He wanted out.
He wanted out, and the Chiefs would welcome someone who didn't want to be a Raider anymore, I think. But
yeah, that's perfect.
I would love to get your guys' thoughts on that. I know he's on the wrong side of 30, but you're asking him to come here for 1 year, and then maybe the Chiefs address wide receiver in the draft next year, and then they go from there. But yeah, your guys' thoughts?
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so I think that, John Brown would be a good addition, but I think Brett Veach and Andy Reid are really banking on McCole Hardman taking that next step. And I think it was Lance Twidwell of The Spoken was talking about it, or maybe he was tweeting about it, that Sammy Watkins and McCole Hardman's stats over the past couple of years have been eerily similar, which was kind of surprising. But Sammy Watkins was hyped up for this great receiver, this great number 2. But when you looked at it, Sammy was on the field a third of the time.
That is something that I've realized is people kind of overstate the presence of Sammy Watkins, because we act like he's going to be so hard to replace his production, but his production really wasn't that much, and he was rarely ever on the field. But that being said, we can all agree that when Sammy Watkins was on the field, he's someone that draws attention. He is better than those guys, and he is a bona fide number 2 receiver, because there was a different feel to this offense when Sammy was healthy. They were more efficient. They were better. Sammy makes tough catches. He's reliable. He's not very durable, but when he's on the field and he's healthy, I think you felt a lot better about this receiver group. And now that he's not here, you don't feel as great about it.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I think that's something that they're just going to have to deal with. I think Pringle could be a guy that gets a lot more touches this year too, but I think kind of when you look at all the other weapons that you don't really need as deep of a receiving core, especially if we see a 4 tight end set occasionally.
Yeah, that's true too.
I think I understand your reasoning for it, and I definitely understand a reasoning for making a video. But I think you answer your own question with a guy that you just talked about previously, and I think you're excited for. I think the guy you're talking about is Fountain.
I would love that.
And I think he does. I mean, and I literally just talked to CJ from Arrowhead Live about this. I think Fountain, now that he is comfortable knowing he made the 53, I think the pressure of going out and performing every single time in the preseason is gone. And I think that pressure is gone. Now he can go out and just play. And I think that's where you're going to see Fountain really even take it to another level because he's comfortable. He knows that he's on this team. I also think that the reason why we don't necessarily need a John Brown is because we also kept Jody Fortson, who I would consider a hybrid, and can also kind of not necessarily fill that speed role, but could fill that role as far as getting the 500 to 600 potential. You know, I saw a joking tweet today. Watch him be like inactive on week 1 just because. But you know, I could see him easily going and getting like 500 or 600 yards. And so I think they have those guys on this team, and I think that. And like I said in the very beginning with Powell, I don't think they envisioned him stepping up the way he did, or even Fortson. I think these were just surprises that they were happy with, and they had to make tough decisions.
Well, and look at this. I mean, Doris Fountain did what he did with Shane Buechele throwing him the football. Give him Patrick Mahomes, we're going to see some fireworks.
I agree. And
you guys are right. And like I said, fans should be excited about the upside of guys, especially Fountain. But I just don't know if it will come to fruition quick enough for me to be comfortable. And Patrick Mahomes, like I've said, you got this brand new offensive line, rejuvenated Patrick Mahomes coming off a Super Bowl loss with something to prove. You want to give him the best receivers possible.
Yeah.
And right now,
I could also see Fountain getting kind of buried in the receiving core. Like I could see him not touching the field a lot because even though you've got in our opinion, I guess, a lack of receivers, I could still see him getting buried behind the Mecoles and the Demarcus Robinson, who insists on getting playing time, and like Byron Pringle. Like I could see him getting buried under the list of all those receivers.
But if that is the case, it would mean those other guys probably stepped up, which in that case, then I guess I can't complain too much. I'm just worried that there is that possibility that all of them or none of them take that step.
Yeah, I mean, I get the concern, but I think one of them will surprise, and I think that's the reason why they did what they did. And like, you know, the Honey Badger called out. Who did he call out today on Twitter? Basically, it was Ron. He basically said like Ron was arguing that they should have kept Tim Ward, and he's like, well, he's like, you don't know what you're talking about then, or whatever. And basically,
Who's
I mean, Ron Cope.
Oh,
basically,
with Arrowhead Pride.
Yeah, basically what he was saying is like, you know, let the coaches who've been doing this forever make those decisions because they did it for a reason. And I think that bodes well for exactly what we're talking about with the receiver position. I don't think they would have kept these guys or sold these guys if they didn't believe in their ability. So I'm excited for it. I think, you know, I'm completely satisfied. I think Marcus Kemp is going to be that floater, though. Even, you know, there's a chance he could even just get dumped off the roster because once the Honey Badger comes back, because you know, they ended up reporting he was vaccinated, so he will, if he's asymptomatic and everything, he'll come back before that first game and be ready to go. So, you know, Kemp could be on the roster to practice and then go down to the practice squad. They may cut one of these other guys on the practice squad. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. That being said, though, I guess we can move on to the tight ends, and we did kind of talk about that a little bit, mentioning Jody Fortson, who I'll talk about in a second here. But obviously, the 4 tight ends are Travis Kelce, Blake Bell, Jody Fortson, Noah Gray, and it is nice to finally see it official that they're keeping 4 tight ends. We dreamed about it for a while. We talked about the 3 tight end sets that the Chiefs have now made 4 tight end sets, that 14 personnel, and that one play they scored the touchdown on with Blake Bell in that last preseason game. It's fun to watch, but real quick, I just want to clear the stage for Jody Fortson because I'm so happy this guy made the roster, man. And everyone has that one guy that they're pulling for to make the roster, and they're waiting to see, chomping at the bit, is Jody Fortson making it? I think the entire Chiefs kingdom was waiting to see Jody Fortson make the roster, and then we all saw those tweets that Jody Fortson was going to be in the Zoom call after practice, which is a good sign that he had made the roster. And then he says that, yeah, he made it, and all the reporters are congratulating him. He gets emotional, borderline tears coming out of his eyes about making the roster. And it's just cool because he has such a great story coming from Valdosta State College, which is not Division I. I mean, it's been a long road for him, and he said it himself. And then also another cool thing that I learned is that he found out he made the team from Patrick Mahomes walking up to him and congratulating him, saying that he made the team. And I just love that, not only because it shows how great of a leader Patrick is, but it shows, I think, that Patrick is in that room when they're making these cuts and saying, I want to keep Jody Fortson, keep that guy. I like him. And to me, that's music to my ears. And I'm just happy Jody Fortson made it.
The Chiefs are the best run organization in football. Period.
I kind of low key wish they would have let Travis do it, just because Travis Kelce actually went on to, the punter for the Colts.
Pat McAfee show.
Yeah, I went on the McAfee show yesterday, and they had him on for about 15 minutes. And at one point, he does say, the 4 tight ends, and he's like, "We're ready to roll." And you could just sense that he was happy that all 4 guys made it. And I thought it would have been pretty cool because I think Fortson looks to. I mean, you would see him in the back pocket of Kelce on the sideline, so I think he looks up to Kelce. I mean, great gesture from Mahomes, but I think Kelce would have been excited too. It was incredible, and it was humbling to hear, not to get off on a rant or anything, but to hear him actually talk on the McAfee show, because how humbling he is, because, he was, 5th overall in the top 100. And he's like, I honestly don't really care about that stuff, just because he's like, I want to go out and play, and he's like, I don't really let it bother me. And then he's talking about how his brother was way too low and stuff. But I think that just shows you, like you guys said, what we have and how this is probably the best ran organization, and just people want to come play here because of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts, Michael?
I mean, honestly, Jody Fortson, I'm really glad that he made the team. I thought that he would. But, it kind of makes you think not just about football. How hard it is to be a guy that gets called in for, a job, and you're not somebody that is a guarantee to make the job, but you fight your way up and you finally make, that kind of stuff. It's always, a fan favorite, and it's always, a good story. And I think that the story doesn't end. I mean, he's going to have a chance to be productive this year, and he's just going to add to the book, I guess. Man, he said fire tonight. I just want to say that.
Yeah, and he said in his interview, and Lucas mentioned it a couple minutes ago, they asked him if the Chiefs asked him to split out to play wide receiver, could he do it? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. Heck, they could ask me to play long snapper, and I'll do it. And he said that he can play some X. He said he can play in the slot. And that's interesting to hear, and I'm excited to see what they have in store for Jody Fordson, because I've said it for the longest time that he just has such a unique skill set that it would be a crime not to take advantage of it, and that kind of size. He is a huge mismatch for defensive players.
He's 6'7"
too.
Yeah, he's 6'6", 6'7".
He'll be on special teams too. He'll probably be the gunner.
Yeah, and he's an underrated gunner too. But if anything else you guys wanted to add to the tight ends, I mean, Noah Gray, we'll see how he develops this season. I thought he was going to have a little bit of a bigger role than he did in preseason, but maybe it ramps up throughout the regular season. And then Travis Kelce and Blake Bell, I mean, there's not much to be said.
Gray had about the impact in the preseason that I would have liked to see out of Cornell Powell.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else from you, Lucas?
I think, we know how Spags approaches the defense with letting young guys kind of develop and learn, and then that second year really kind of take the reins. I think they're taking that approach now. Again, that we have depth, they're taking that approach. Will he get some playing time? Most definitely. But are they going to let him just go out there and ball out the whole time? No, I think they're going to let him learn what it's like to be an NFL player, an NFL tight end, and then next year he might actually be. I mean, Blake Bell may not be on this team, and then he's truly that number 2. And so I think that's the approach they're going to start taking with a lot of these players. I truly think that was the intention with Trey Smith, and then the situation happened, and now Trey Smith's the starter. But I think they want these guys to learn and develop and understand what it's like to go through a full season of an NFL season, and then go at it next year. And I like that approach.
Yeah. Moving on though, offensive linemen, Orlando Brown, Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, Lucas Niang, Austin Blythe, Andrew Wiley, Mike Remmers, Nick Allegretti, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. I will say I'm not surprised by any of the guys that they kept. And there's not too much to be said. We all knew what the starting offensive line was going to be from the end of the preseason there. But I will say I am a bit surprised we did not see any of them dealt. I'm surprised that the Chiefs did not deal anyone on roster cutdown day. Me and Lucas were both pretty adamant that we see the Chiefs make a move of some sort, but they keep all those guys, and that's your offensive line group.
I was correct. As a no. I couldn't see them. Well, they did deal an offensive lineman with Yasir Durant.
Yeah, I felt that went without saying. So
yeah, but yeah, honestly, I like this group. I like the fact that they're carrying 10 offensive linemen. You're going to need depth at that position. I kind of go into every season expecting 1 or 2 of them to get hurt. Maybe it's not a season-ending injury, but you're in every play, so obviously you're going to get a little bit banged up.
Well, I did float the idea of maybe trading LDT a little bit there as we approached cutdown day, and Albert Breer did report that the Chiefs were fielding calls on LDT, but then I kind of sat back and thought about it. The Chiefs don't ever want what happened in the Super Bowl to happen again, and really, we've already seen attrition hit pretty hard so far. Austin Blythe, sports hernia. Mike Remmers, back spasms. Kyle Long with the leg injury, broken leg. LDT, broken hand. That's 4 major pieces to your offensive line already with pretty serious injuries, and the regular season hasn't even started yet. So I understand keeping all the depth possible.
Well, and going into it, probably if you rewind back to very early on into the preseason, a lot of the projections were Brown, Tooney, even some people said Blythe, and then Kyle Long, and then Mike Remmers. I mean, we've completely changed that offensive line, and I definitely think it's going to be for the better for the long term. But yeah, it's already changed. So yeah, who knows what could potentially happen? I mean, we hope it doesn't happen, but I mean, like Michael said, they are in every play. I mean, accidents happen, roll-ups happen, so you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anything else you guys wanted to talk with the offensive line group?
I think that'll be the shortest one.
Yeah, there's not a ton of surprises there. Same thing with this next one, defensive tackles. Derek Nottie, Jerron Reed, Treshawn Wharton, Colin Saunders. I'll go ahead and include the defensive ends in there with them. The defensive ends that make it: Chris Jones, Frank Clark, Mike Dana, Alex Okafor, and Josh Kando. Someone that was, I guess you could call a surprise cut. Towards the end there, I think we kind of all saw it coming, but Tim Ward misses the cut, doesn't make the team. And we actually see him get picked up by the New York Jets today. He's going to their practice squad now. But to be honest, I don't think Tim Ward is the type of player to where the Chiefs are going to regret that or anything. They had a guy in Kando that they drafted that I think we can all agree probably has a lot more upside than Tim Ward. And I did like the flashes we saw out of Tim Ward in preseason and going back to week 17 of last year when he played against the Chargers, but not a ton of surprises out of the defensive line cuts either.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest surprise for me was that Chris Jones was listed as an edge and not a tackle. That was my biggest surprise, I guess you could say.
Low key, I know Josh is going to immediately smile on this.
It's got something to do with Frank Clark.
No Clark.
It really has surprised me about the lack of discussions he's been involved with.
I know.
I mean,
I think the Chiefs, I think they wanted to keep the discussion on Frank Clark to a minimum, given everything that's gone on with him as of recently, and they've done a heck of a job. I have not heard anything about Frank Clark. And you mentioned it, Lucas. The Chiefs are getting used to life without Frank Clark, and I am loving it.
I mean, they really are. I mean, I think, as we get into the practice squad stuff, I think because certain players were added, I really think that they thought Tim Ward was going to clear and he was going to make it. And I do think that they added this player that we'll talk about at the very end because Tim Ward ended up getting picked up. And I think the same goes for Keys. I think that they really wanted those two to come back, and unfortunately they didn't. And we knew that. I mean, we knew that some good players were going to get picked up by other teams. I mean, that's what happens when you cut good players. So
yeah, Keys went to the Colts, by the way, Michael. I know you slipped that in there.
Yeah, he got picked up by the Colts.
Yeah. So, did you have anything you wanted to finish there, Lucas?
I'm super excited. I think what Darcy said too, with Jones lining up as the DN and on the depth chart being listed as a DN, I think that speaks volumes to kind of what they're expecting. And I really think that that's something that we are going to have to pay attention to as the season progresses. The progressions of Kalen Saunders, was it just a preseason fluke, or is he actually getting a lot better? Is Wharton stepping up the way we expect? How is Mike Dana handling going in and out and playing some DN when Frank Clark may not be there? So I think those question marks are still there because yes, we're seeing them in the preseason, but this is going against the ones for 4 quarters. So I'll be interested to continuously watch this DN and D tackle as we go into this season. But I really like what they've assembled. I think we have the potential to have a very, very, very good front seven, and potentially even a top 10 defense by the time, we're halfway through the season.
Yeah, I'm excited for the tackles because I'll admit, I was hard on Colin Saunders heading into this training camp, and he went out and he had a very good preseason and training camp. And you look at the Chiefs defensive tackle group now, it looks amazing, even without Chris Jones listed there now. You got a starting two of Derek Nottie and Jerron Reed in the middle, which is a very stout group. Derek Nottie, we all know he's going to be your best run stopper in the middle. And then Jerron Reed has the tools to be a good run defender, but you also brought him here to give you some interior rush while Chris Jones transitions out to the edge. But then you look, Tershawn Wharton, we all love Tershawn Wharton. I think we all expect a pretty big jump from him as he starts to develop his pass rush arsenal and have a counter for guards. But now that you have Colin Saunders in there too, Jerron Reed and Derek Nottie, when they're taking a break and it's been mentioned on the broadcast before, when they're out of the game and then you have Tershawn Wharton and Colin Saunders all juiced up, ready to go out there, I mean, these tired offensive linemen are going to be like, oh my God, the Chiefs, they just keep coming with these athletic monsters, and it's going to be hell for other teams to deal with.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm going to say this right now, I'll probably say it a couple other times, I would not be remotely surprised if Chris Jones put up 18 sacks this year.
I think he's a dark horse candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, I know it's preseason, but man, he dominated preseason.
Oh, if he would have played the entire game, he would have had like 3-4 sacks.
Yeah, he looks amazing.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
I think it's because finally they were like, "Hey, Chris, we're going to let you play the end, but you got to show that you're worth it. Not necessarily worth it, but you got to show us that you want to earn it." And I think he's like, "Cool, you give me the opportunity that I've wanted, I'll go do it." I just predicted on the episode I recorded before this, I think he's going to get 20. I'm on that boat.
Wouldn't be surprised. Would not be surprised.
Yeah, I
Do we
think.
think, and if he gets those 20 sacks, and assuming the rest of his stat line is up there too, do we think he can win Defensive Player of the Year? Do we think he does enough to end the voters' love for Aaron Donald?
I hope so. I
It all
really
de-
hope so.
It all depends to me at that point on how Aaron Donald's done with sacks too, because I think they take into consideration the fact that Aaron Donald's like triple teamed a lot of the time. So it'll be interesting. And now that they don't play, potentially all the snaps of Chris Jones may not be at D tackle. Maybe they take that into consideration too. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they approach that. I mean, there's.
At some point, I feel like Aaron Donald is really good, so maybe I'm wrong on this, but I feel like eventually that voter fatigue is going to set in, and these guys are going to be like, we want to vote for someone else other than Aaron Donald. So it's not necessarily that Aaron Donald isn't deserving of Defensive Player of the Year, but they just want to vote for someone else.
I feel like if the Chiefs go like 15-2 as well, like if they're a winning team, that'll have something to do with it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Going on to the linebackers, Lucas's favorite position, the team decided to keep Willie Gay, Anthony Hitchens, Nick Bolton, Ben Neiman, Darius Harris, which kind of surprised me a little bit. Surprised that's not Amari Cobb, but I think Darius Harris maybe gives them a player that can play a role that
Harris has a lot of size. Sorry to cut you off, but he's got a lot of size to him.
Yeah, no, he does. But if they had decided to keep Amari Cobb, I'm not sure who Amari Cobb is ahead of on that depth chart. I think they really like what Darius Harris gives them. And then Dorian O'Daniel, once again, squeaks onto this team, and I think that is a Dave Toub special right there.
I was seeing today, they were talking, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but I think Dave Toub has a lot more pull as a special teams coach than any other special teams coach out there, and I think it's just because the longevity and the partnership that he has with Andy Reid, to where he has enough pull to say, hey, I would like this guy to stay on the roster because of this, this, and this. And I think Dorian O'Daniel is a perfect example of that. I think, if given the opportunity, I think we could see him perform at the linebacker position. I do and have heard rumors that he still struggles with the playbook. That would be insane to me, especially being this far into his career. I mean, it's not super deep, but
he was drafted in 2018.
Yeah, so if he still doesn't understand the playbook, then yeah, he should not be on this team. But yeah. I definitely think that this is a Dave Toub, like, hey, Andy, like, let me pull a few strings, and this is one of them.
Right, and I know we talked about it in the last episode, Lucas, but we're still concerned about linebacker depth, but the Chiefs did pick up a guy on their practice squad now who I think has a chance to crack this rotation at some point next season, but I guess we'll save that for the end.
Yeah.
But that is
cool name.
Core.
Has a really cool name.
Yeah. It is a cool name, and I even tweeted that out today too.
But I really quickly I wanted to throw this in there. I think one of the biggest mistakes the Chiefs made this offseason, and it's not one that's going to go it's probably one that no one's even thought about, but I really, really wish they would have kept Damon Wilson for what he was worth.
I know, me too.
Damon Wilson was a good linebacker that could come in and fill snaps. And I think that if you had a rotation of Willie Gay, Anthony Hitchens, Nick Bolton, Damian Wilson, I would not be complaining about this linebacking core. But the fact that Ben Neiman is a Willie Gay injury away from potentially starting scares the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. Ben Neiman should not start on a Super Bowl caliber team. He just shouldn't.
Yeah, no, it's a valid concern, and I would have loved for them to keep Damian Wilson too, especially because he signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars for dirt cheap as well. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. We'll see what they do.
I think this is Nick Bolton's time. I think, if Willie Gay does actually go on the IR and is out to 3 games, Nick Bolton has a lot to show out for and play for because he is playing for next year too. I mean, we know Anthony Hitchens could go. So I think Bolton, my biggest issue is Bolton's been dinged for coverage. We know Ben Neiman can't, if he fell out of a boat, he couldn't touch water. So that's my biggest concern is that over that middle when they're wanting to do, some plays where the linebacker's covering, my biggest concern is that the separation they're going to be able to get because of that. And That's my only concern. I think Hitchens obviously has a capability of doing some of that, but yeah, I think that's where you're going to see Willie Gay be missed the most is the coverage aspect, and we'll have to see. Maybe some of the safety step up. Maybe Dan Sorensen can help out a little bit with that, or even the Honey Badger. So we'll just have to see. But it's going to be tough because that first game, I think that would be a good time to expose that. As if the linebackers are really without Willie Gay, I think that the Cleveland Browns can expose the Chiefs linebacking core for sure.
Well, I mean, I know the Browns got better this offseason, but we do have to remember that Willie Gay was out for that entire playoff run, and the Chiefs still did okay without him. And now you add Nick Bolton to that group. You lose Damian Wilson, but you add Nick Bolton. So if the Chiefs can do that, then I think they'll be all right this time around too. But we'll just have to see. I think that's pretty much all that needs to be said. Moving on to quarterbacks, and I'm interested to hear what your guys' thoughts are about this one. But Rashad Fenton, L'Jarius Sneed, Charvarius Ward, DeAndre Baker, Mike Hughes, and then Chris Lamons makes the squad, which was a surprise to me. They let go of Bo Pete Keys. They cut ties last year's draft pick. And Chris Lamons, I can't say I saw that coming. However, we do need to acknowledge the Tobe factor here. And Chris Lamons has been a damn good special teamer, and that kind of goes untalked about.
That's another Dave Tobe string pull right there.
Has to be. Because, I mean, I talked about it in my video. He didn't have anything in camp that was like, oh, this dude's it. And he didn't show anything. Did he even play in the preseason on, like, I guess he had to play in the preseason, but that'd be like the equivalent of if Marlon Character made the team. It just doesn't make sense.
I agree. I think this, I've said it multiple times, the secondary, specifically this cornerback room, is going to be tested week in and week out. I mean, I think if you found a way, I'm sure there's a stat out there, to who has the toughest schedule from a cornerback position, I think it would be the Kansas City Chiefs this year. I think just top to bottom, the whole roster or the whole schedule, it is a very competitive receiving duo matchup for this and the cornerbacks. I like everybody they kept. I would have loved to see Keys stay instead of Lamons, but it is what it is.
Maybe even put Devin Key as a defensive back and get him on the roster that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that it was Lamons, but I gotta say he's earned it through special teams. But
I was gonna say this is the Antonio Hamilton signing this year. Now that I think about it,
and if they wanted Antonio Hamilton back, they can still go and get him. But
yeah, you got cut.
I do want to say that Antonio Hamilton last year, he had to play some cornerback snaps out of necessity.
Horrible.
It was not good. It was not good.
Was he the one that switched over to running back?
No, that was Tremont Smith a couple
That's
years
it.
ago.
Yeah, Tremont Smith.
Wait, Tremont Smith's a running back now?
No, he was for like 2 weeks at Chiefs training camp a couple years ago, and then he switched back to corner, and then he ended up getting cut.
I remember he had that play in New England where I think it was a punt or the kick return. Took it 90 yards.
I gotta say, I said at some point last year that I don't know what Tremont Smith's doing nowadays, but I would sign him back just to be a kick returner because God, our kick returning was awful last year. Because he made a
couple of good
like
plays.
all rookie team as a returner or something like that. So I mean, he was a good returner. He just wasn't a good football player outside of that. But moving on.
Oh man.
Moving on to the safeties, really, again, no surprises. Tyrann Mathieu, Dan Sorensen, Juan Thornhill, Armani Watts. You like seeing Armani Watts make it again because I think he was on the roster bubble going into training camp. But those are your 4 safeties.
Had 2 picks in the preseason. Armani Watts, Stan. That's me. I think if he takes over like a backup role, he could be a very good football player.
Yeah, because before he just wasn't getting on the field at all on defense, like very minimal snaps on defense. But if he can just grow into a capable backup,
I think he could have the Rashad Fenton effect. And Rashad Fenton, I got a lot of respect for Rashad Fenton.
Yeah. What do you think, Lucas? And Armani Watts is a much better athlete than Rashad Fenton as well. So you got to love the upside if he can step into that fourth safety role. But anyway, Lucas, what do you think?
Yeah, safety is always probably my second go-to, and I like this safety room that we got. I think I do think at some point you see an extra safety come up. I do think maybe Devin Key will come up at some point. Not saying that he had a great preseason. I mean, you guys know I was a big fan, but from a realistic standpoint, he did have some moments where it was like, yeah, we see why he got cut. But I do think that they're going to definitely at some point have to add another safety. Because, like, for perfect example right now, let's just say Honey Badger can't play. That leaves you with only 3 safeties. And I think to me that's a little concerning too. So I could see another safety being added. But they did add 2 of them to the practice squad, so they see something in those guys. But I really like everything. I like Armani Watts. I liked him coming out of college. I think that our scheme, it fits these guys perfectly. Like, we know what Dan Sorensen's role is. We know that when Juan Thornhill's healthy, he's a freak and plays that center field, and we let the Honey Badger roam. So I'm a big advocate for what we did, and I like this safety room for sure.
Yeah, me too. But all that being said, that's the end of the roster. Of course, you got your other guys, Tommy Townsend, Harrison Butker. They all made it. But Lucas, why don't you take over and give us the guys who are on the Chiefs practice squad?
For sure. So running down, Damon Harris, defensive end. Austin Edwards, who really showed out in that last preseason game. I was a big fan of Austin Edwards. Glad he made it. My guy, Devin Key, obviously made the practice squad. Zane Anderson, who really kind of intrigues me as another safety. So it'll be interesting to see, him develop and come back. Amari Cobb, Darrell Williams, not to be confused with the running back. This is the center. Cornell Powell, one that was not on the team throughout all of training camp and has made this roster is Christian Roseboom, who we talked, excitement for the linebacker. I would envision there's a chance he could come up.
Let's just talk about him real quick before you move on, Lucas, because I am really intrigued by this one. This is someone who, from what I understand, the Rams would have liked to keep on their own practice squad. Stood out in preseason. Really good coverage linebacker, which is really ideally what you're looking for is a linebacker that can play in coverage for this team. And he's someone that can play in the middle of the defense too. And he can be a guy in coverage, had an interception in preseason. So I think Christian Roseboom is definitely a guy who could potentially work his way into the linebacker rotation this upcoming season.
I'm not going to lie. I've never even heard of him, but I hope he's good. I know a lot of practice squad dudes. When you mentioned the name, didn't know who he was, but wish him the best.
Yeah, I think he has a shot. I think at some point you'll see him trickle up there. And it'll be interesting when he does come up. Will he go back down? Is the question. Shane Buchelet should be Anthony Gordon. D tackle Cortez Broughton, and I saw this today. This was brought up, and I think this is significant. So this Broughton guy was actually in last year's franchise video. And it's in the part where the scouts and Brett Veach are breaking down film, and it's showing how they break it down, and they're actually talking about this guy. So if you go back and look, it's episode 2, I believe, and it's about the 4-minute mark, and they really break him down and talk about why they really like him. So very interesting, and so that's something that's on there. He was not obviously on the Chiefs at any point, so an outsider that made the practice squad. Benito Jones, another D tackle, same situation, an outsider that made the practice squad. Receiver Maurice French, one that I'm
glad to see. I'm glad to see French come back because I think there's still upside with French, but I wanted to throw that in there, so I was happy to see that.
One that I'm very, very, very intrigued by, and I really again think that
is it my guy. Is it Brown?
Yeah, Shakur Brown, man. I was
excited to talk about him.
7 interceptions, Michigan or Michigan State?
In 7 games, Michigan State. Yeah, he had 7 interceptions in 7 games. Like, absolutely insane production. The only problem was it was such a small sample size because if you look at his tape, because this was a guy I was heavy into during the draft process, I mocked him to the Chiefs a couple times. He was in my final mock draft right before draft day. And really, he is aggressive. He's a little undersized, but he plays with a lot of heart. He's instinctive, and he's got good ball skills, as we mentioned, the 7 interceptions in 7 games. But you would be taking a leap of faith with him because his pass play in college is littered with mistakes, false, steps and everything like that. He was a really shaky player up until that final year. So it was a small sample size, and it's possible that I forget who he was even with, what practice squad before, what team he was with for training camp, but it's possible they just didn't get enough time to see him, so they had other priorities and he didn't make it there. But definitely Shakur Brown, another guy that long-term could end up being an important player on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Is he a DeAndre Baker signing almost?
Nah, DeAndre Baker had better pedigree coming out, but
I mean, he was a first-round talent. But
you just mean like someone talented that falls into their laps? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
As crazy as it sounds, I think Brown was Key's spot, and I think if Keys was able to come back, I don't think that they would have gotten Shakur Brown.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting aspect.
So,
do you have any of your own thoughts on Brown?
I think he's got, and that's what I'm excited about. I really think that whoever is tracking and scouting the cornerbacks, I think has done a very, very good job. I mean, clearly they hit on L'Jarius Sneed. I mean, they've been able to go get guys like DiCaprio Bootle, who is next on this list, who I think, with some time could make this team. Rashad Fenton is low-key just lurking there. That is a very good corner. So I really like, what we have from a cornerback perspective, and I think that they've been doing a very good job with that. And I think Brown has a lot of high upside. Like you said, there's a lot of risk, but that's why he's on a practice squad, not starting on a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And is that the end of the practice squad? Are we done?
Well, and so here's my thing. So DiCaprio Bootle was the next one. And then I truly think that they were going to hope that Tim Ward made it and he would have been on here. Instead, I think that they were kind of not necessarily caught off guard, but I'm like, we don't really see anybody that we like. They went ahead and added Garrett Dieter to be last.
I didn't know that. I did not know that at all.
So, yeah, Garrett Dieter.
I heard rumors, and I don't know if this is true, that Kemp's on the active roster.
Yes.
Yeah, he is now with Tyron going to the COVID list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was my biggest thing, man. And seriously, what bothered me the most is when people say cut, like they're talking about releasing or cutting, or versus waivers. And I think that the two terms were tossed around very loosely yesterday when on Twitter and really kind of how people were saying it. When they were put on waivers, that gave them the ability to get claimed by another team. If they don't, and they clear, then they can go to the practice squad. Not saying that if they outright release them, they can't come back to the practice squad, but they're releasing them for a reason, and they are okay with parting ways with them. And I think that yet was thrown around very loosely yesterday. Like, yes, they released Darwin Thompson, but they waived like Gore, and so that tells me that
they waived Thompson because he's like, I'm not coming back, dog. Like, I mean,
yeah, so they probably just released Darwin because they realized, hey, we've done this for a couple years now. It's not working out. You're not willing to. It sounds he probably got called in. He wasn't willing to accept it. So then, yeah, they released him. And I think the same goes for I think Buchelet was actually released and then signed to the practice squad. So, but yeah, I think that it's interesting to see how our practice squad's lined up, and I'll be interested to see as it progresses through, the year, because we see guys bounce in and out of the practice squad all the time. Like, they may see a guy and add him and drop somebody else. So, Garrett Dieter may not be on there. He might actually get released. So, it'll be interesting.
I'm just done with the Dieter saga, man. Like, just end it. He's not an NFL receiver.
Well, and I think that part of me is starting to wonder if that's a Dave Tobe signing. I mean, we understand he's good friends with Mahomes and very good in that receiving group, but I kind of wonder if he's part of Dave Tobe too, because part of me saw like on that Gore screen that went for like 50-something yards. Garrett Dieter was actually one of the ones out front, like just blowing up blocks for that guy on the way down. So I wonder if they view him as a pretty good special teamer as well.
Potentially. I did want to ask one more question because we're almost at an hour, so we'll have a few minutes for your question, Lucas. I know you wanted to ask us, but I wanted to ask you guys real quick. Anyone else that was cut from another team that still hasn't been claimed, or heck, maybe they're claimed already, but I'm just curious, what other guys got cut from other teams or waived from other teams that you would have liked to see the Chiefs pick up, or that you would still like to see the Chiefs pick up? Anyone in mind?
John Brown's the only dude that I can think of.
Johnson from who cut him? It was a surprise cut.
The Chargers.
Yes. Him, and then was it Fulgham?
Yeah, Travis Fulgham.
Yeah, those two were because of how, we needed a receiver. So those two were kind of my go-to guys.
All right.
Where was
I was just
Fulgham?
curious. Eagles wide receiver.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Which was surprising for them is, it was a surprise for a lot of people, I think, up there.
Yeah. He's a deep threat, that's for sure. Kiki Kuti, I'm not as impressed with him as other people probably would have been, but I think something important, and I know he already got picked up, but I think an important factor there was he was one of Mahomes' guys in college, and sometimes you got to think.
Where'd he get picked up to?
It might have been Indianapolis too.
Was it?
I could be wrong, but he did get picked up by someone else.
Yeah.
All right, Lucas, I know you wanted to ask us a question kind of leading into week one, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear your guys' thoughts. Obviously, we understand that the 53's wrapped up. We know going into it kind of what we're expecting. What is the biggest matchup you're looking forward to? And so my example would be, and I'm not saying this is the one I'm specifically looking at, but like Odell and Jarvis versus our corners. Obviously the opposite would be a lot of people are saying our linebackers versus Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So from just using those two examples, what are you guys looking forward to in this matchup?
Did you want to go first, Michael?
I mean, I can. You can though if you want.
All right. Well,
paper, rock, scissors.
I feel like Michael is going to say the new offensive line versus the Browns defensive line.
Dude.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
So I'll go with, and Lucas, you kind of mentioned it there. I am intrigued about the matchup between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb versus our defensive line and our linebackers, because I know we held them relatively in check in that playoff game, but to do it twice is going to be extremely difficult now that the Browns have a fully healthy O-line, one of the better offensive lines in the league. And then you get to see this new linebacker core versus them. And Kareem Hunt, he still wants to make it a personal thing, I'm sure, and he's going to be coming out looking to do good. So I'm definitely interested to see how our new run defense does against the best running back duo in the league.
Okay, so I was going to say the offensive line versus Marcus Garrett. Miles Garrett. I'm thinking KU. Never mind.
Rock chalk, baby.
I know, but I'm going to go with – I still think that's going to be something to look at, but I want to see how our defensive end group gets after Baker Mayfield, because their offensive line's pretty good. But I think that, if they got to double team Chris, Jerron Reed is going to have a chance to exploit their offensive line. And who knows, maybe Frank Clark decides to play some football and he might do something as well. I think that, maybe even Mike Dana.
You know what's going to happen, Michael? He's going to get a coverage sack in the fourth quarter of the game, and everyone's going to say Frank Clark is back.
If he gets like 2 or 3, that'd be pretty
He's got to take
not happening. Because you know what? You know how many we're going to go down a Frank Clark rabbit hole.
Got to get down the Frank Clark rabbit hole.
Do you know how many times, and we're going to see it, you know how many times last season before a game I would see someone on Twitter say, I feel a big Frank Clark game coming, and it just never happened. I'm like, you guys have got to give up on that. It's not happening.
Guess what you're gonna get from me on Twitter this year?
You should tag
Lucas-
Josh in every single
Lucas-
single tweet.
Just tweet a GIF of a shark like right before the game.
That's on.
There-
Yeah,
There's blood in the water today, boys.
God, I hate that.
Oh man.
Well,
Could you
guys,
imagine if Frank Clark got like 15 sacks this year?
I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I really do think that is realistic because, and it's not to his ability what we've seen.
It's because of what this new defensive line opens up.
Correct. I think that because the offensive or the defensive line has gotten that much better, I think that there is a chance that we see better production from him just because of that.
I think 15 is a stretch. 10 would be
Yeah,
kind of what
I think 10 is realistic for him. I really do. Because there's been a few times where last year he probably could have gotten to that point, but he just couldn't take the quarterback down. And so, yeah, I think that there's going to be that opportunity for sure. I think for him, it's just he's going to have to succeed in that position.
Right. I'll flip the question back to you though, Lucas. What matchup are you looking forward to? And then we'll wrap it up.
Honestly, the reason why I brought the linebacker one up is because that's the one I'm looking forward to the most. I think the reason, because you answered that, I'll give you another one. But the reason why for the linebackers is just because if Willie Gate is out, you're putting a lot of expectations on a rookie to go out there and handle two very, very good running backs. We understand Anthony Hitchens is still going to be there, but I mean, we know that Nick Bolton's going to have to step up unless Ben Neiman takes his, God dang. But that is going to be something I would watch. And then, but in all honesty, I think for me, it's going to be our receivers against their corners and their newly added defensive, DBs, because they went and added Troy Hill. They added Johnson from both of them from the Rams. And then a lot of their former first-round picks are starting to come back. So as of right now, they are fully healthy, and I think their secondary has gotten tremendously better. Do I think they're going to be able to contain Tyreek Hill and really kind of put him on a leash? No, but I do think that they
won't be able to stop Hardman either. But if he can't catch the football, there's no point. I mean, yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, that's
starting the season.
And it could be right. It could be. I mean, that's what's going to be crazy about this whole thing. I really think early on we were talking about how Hardman should have to step up and do all this. I'm not even about that anymore, man. If Fountain starts to play, man, I give that dude a contract, like a legit contract, and that's what I'm going to be paying attention the most. Honestly, is it. And do I think he's going to be blowing people away the first game? No, but if he progressively by like week 5 is getting like 5 to 6 catches, or we'll even say 4 to 5, that's noticeable. And that's what I'm going to be paying attention to.
Yeah, I agree. And I would be happy to see that because I'm a huge Fountain fan. But all that being said, Lucas, you want to go ahead and wrap it up for us?
Yeah, I think we covered enough. Went an hour and 8 minutes. Hopefully you guys got enough content from this. We really appreciate you guys checking it out. Like I said,
real quick, I mean, for the record, I feel like this is probably one of our best shows yet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I drink a lot of whiskey, so maybe I need to do that more. But I do appreciate you guys checking out obviously what we got going on the Kingdom Crew. This is by far one of the most fun, and I look forward to this every time we do it because it really is a lot of fun. So we appreciate you guys checking out the Kingdom Crew podcast. Go check out Michael's YouTube channel. Go check out Josh's YouTube channel. Guys are absolutely killing it. And I think what's unique too, I want to put that in there, is yes, we come together, we collaborate and do this, but we also find unique ways to kind of separate ourselves and go make our own. And I think that's what's good too. So we really do appreciate the support.
I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. I feel like I was going to say One Direction. We can be the Beatles. Wait. Think of like Migos, right? How they can.
Oh God, where's he going with this?
They can branch off and still make good music.
Michael, you're cutting up. Sorry, we can't hear you. And with that being said,
when Migos comes together, they create culture too. when they split up, they still make good music. And I'm done making analogies for tonight. Thanks for watching the show, guys.
Drake's better than Kanye. All right. With that being said,
I never.
with that being said, guys,
dislikes.
we appreciate it so much. And as always, we appreciate you checking out the Kingdom Crew podcast. Have a good evening. I almost hit leave.